It's very important to understand the data that you're working with. So when we talk about like service provision data, so that we're collecting, when we put information into V4, when we do GBV-IMS, when we use CP-IMS, when we use any of these things where it's basically we're just collecting data as part of our service provision, this is not perfect data. This is data that is going to be defined somewhat by who's reporting. It's going to be defined by who is collecting data. So perhaps maybe not everybody who's providing services is collecting data. It's going to be defined by the availability of services. If there are no services, you're going to have big spots in your data. So it's really important to think about that is reported data versus prevalence data, which is all incidents in a population. So prevalence data is basically if you were to say that 25% of women in this context have been subjected to gender-based violence, that is a prevalence data statement. That is saying that if 1 out of 4, theoretically, people based upon specific data collection have been subjected to violence. There's a very big difference between these two types of data. It's very, very difficult and very time consuming to collect prevalence data. So rarely, you're really just not going to have prevalence data. And it's really important to set expectations of those who expect prevalence data about what goes into it. And so actually having our service delivery data is a really good option, but it's important that when we analyze our data and more importantly, when we explain our data, people understand that it is not prevalence data. We actually need to say that because what also can happen is it can shoot us in our foot when people see our information and they think that is representative of what's happening. And we know that maybe if there are no service providers here, the cases are going to be low because no one's reporting, whereas they might think, oh, there's just no GBV here. Or in some contexts, when we start opening up a whole bunch more centers and we see the numbers go up, people will say, oh, the GBV is rising here, or it's not. It's just that maybe there's more service providers. So the difference between prevalence and reported data is really, really important in terms of how we interpret the data. And it's very important that we always clarify that in our narrative reports or when we explain it, because it is like the most common misinterpretation of GBV data for sure, and child protection often as well. And it causes us a lot of problems in terms of advocacy as well, trying to get funding for programming and that sort of stuff. So it's really, really important that's clarified. And depending upon what your need is, I mean, prevalence can be really good for like a one-off in terms of if you want to do a big research study or that, but reality is that's not going to be an ongoing data collection process. It's going to be more like those that are in line with your services. So this is just a more reasonable and a feasible method of data collection for long term.